primary fear is I'm afraid I'm going to be rejected by the guys that work there. I'm afraid that their conversations out of earshot from me are something along the lines of, well, you see that Bob? You know, the only reason he's here is his dad's friends with the guy who owns the company. Normally, we would never have anybody like him here. That's my fear, is they're going to reject me. So what happened is my fear drove on me to become defensive and on the muscle with those guys and until I'm the guy that eventually they're calling into the office and they're saying, Bob, you're a hard worker, but we're going to have to let you go because you're not a team player. Because I'd become the producer of confusion rather than harmony. I was the defensive guy. The guys that I took that stance of, what do you mean by that? You know, I'm that guy. And I made the fear come true. And as I was leaving there, the little voice in my head said, see, you were right. I like being right. So, in the middle of page 68 in the fear section, it talks about trust being the answer. We think so. We're on the different basis here. Remember the decision we made in step 3. We're on the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite, maximum, unlimited capacity God instead of my limited, finite, fallible human self. And one of the reasons that I went dry one time for about 8-10 months, and I holed up. The last time I was ever allowed to live in my parents' house, I holed up in the back den and sat in front of a TV set for 8 months from 7 o'clock in the morning till it went off the air at 1 or 2 o'clock in the night. And it's like, if you're with untreated alcoholism, TV is kind of like Valium with a plug. You know what I mean? You just zone out there. And I was fine until my father told me I couldn't do that. He started pressuring me to go get a job or get a social life or do something. And I had a nervous breakdown. And I ended up in the psychiatrist's office, and he was a good psychiatrist. I was very honest with him. And I tried to tell him all the things I was afraid of. And I couldn't be very specific because I couldn't leave my dad's house and go out on the streets sober. I don't know what I'm afraid of, but I'm just overwhelmed with a sense of terror going and facing people and trying to socialize with them sober and mix and go ask for a job, and I just can't do it. I've sat there in that chair for so long I'm paralyzed. And I didn't understand what was going on, and he diagnosed me as having free-floating anxiety with panic disorder, and gave me some medication, which was I like pills. I've always liked pills. As a matter of fact, he's writing. He pulls out the prescription pad, and he's starting to write. I'm feeling better already. Just watching him write that, I almost wanted to start crying. Here's a man who understands. I mean, as he's writing the prescription, I'm feeling better, right? But the prescription didn't really help. It took a little bit of the edge off, but it also eventually started a slow burn on the phenomenon of craving because I got a little bit of relief, and you know me, a little bit of relief is never enough for me. But it got me back to where I got the real relief. It got me into the bar, and it got me into the bar with information that when I got out of the line, I could tell those people, I know I look like an alcoholic, but see, I got free-floating anxiety and panic disorder. That's really the problem. But what this psychiatrist said was not completely wrong. This anxiety leading to panic is the result of playing God in my own life. It's the anxiety of playing God. When I am the center and everything in the universe that revolves around me is my responsibility, there is a lot of things to worry about. There's a world full of people out there, and they're all thinking stuff, and it has to do with me somehow, and I don't know what it is, and I got to figure it out. And you got to watch them real closely, and the only way to stay on top of it is just continually accuse them of stuff, and you're bound to be right eventually until you finally hit it, what it is. It's awful like that. And this nervous breakdown I had, which there's a real thin line between nervous breakdown and surrender. I mean, you really don't know which way you're going. And this nervous breakdown I had was because it was too much. I think when I'm running my life and it's all on my shoulders, it's like going into your kitchen and getting the blender that's designed for 110 volts and taking it into the laundry room and plugging it into the 220. It just overloads and burns itself out because it doesn't have the capacity to handle the load. And when I am the center of the universe, eventually the same thing happens to me. I don't have the capacity to handle the load. That's why I love working with newcomers, and I love the new people and the pre-surrendered new people in our group, because they look tired all the time. I mean, because there's stuff to worry about all that. I mean, this is heavy. And you ask them how they're doing. How you doing? And they always go, hanging in there. I had one guy say, I said, how you doing? He goes, well, I guess it's not bad if you don't weaken. I heard this gal one time, she came back into the detox meeting that she had been in detox, and she was out now running the universe for a month. And she came to the meeting. I said, how's it going? And she had her big eyes, and she said, it's too big. I knew exactly. I said, yeah, it is, isn't it? Oh, yeah, I know. It's too big. It's awful. That's infinite God rather than our finite selves. And this thing about trust, I had an experience. I was sober a little while, and I was at a retreat. And between the afternoon, there was a big break, and I'm sitting with an old-timer out on the lawn, and I'm talking to him, and I'm in early sobriety, and I hadn't really gone through this process yet, and I'd gone through kind of a BS version of the steps in early sobriety, but I hadn't really done this yet. And I'm telling this guy, I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I get up in the morning, and I get down on my knees, and I say the third step prayer, turn my will and my life over to the care of God, and 5 minutes later, I'm worrying about stuff. I'm full of anxiety. I'm running the scenarios about when I get to work, what they'll do, what I'll do, all that stuff. It's driving me crazy. It's wearing on me. And he said, well, you pray, don't you? I said, yeah, I pray all the time. He said, do you have faith? You believe in God? I said, yeah, I know. I'm sober longer than I've ever been since I first took a drink when I was a young kid. And I know it's God. I know it's not me. I've relapsed for 7.5 years. God's doing this. He said, you know something? He said, guys like you and me, we can pray fervently, we can have all the faith in the world, and we can still die of alcoholism. He said, for us, faith isn't enough. We have to have something bigger than faith. We have to have faith in action. And he says we have to have trust. And I must have looked at him like I didn't know what he was talking about. And he says, I'll tell you the difference between faith and trust. He said, if you went to a circus and you sat in the audience and you watched the tight wire act, you could watch a guy come out to the edge of the platform pushing a wheelbarrow. You'd sit in the audience and have all the faith in the world. He's a professional. He can cross that tight wire pushing that wheelbarrow. Say to yourself, bet she's done it 1,000 times. Absolute faith he can do it. But if you had trust, you'd go up there and get in the wheelbarrow. And when he said that, I got my chest got tight. Wait a minute. Oh, and I knew what he meant. I knew I had to live my life as if I'm in that wheelbarrow. Right? Stop the defensiveness. I can't do it. I like the idea. I like to talk about getting in the wheelbarrow. I like to go to book studies and read about getting in the wheelbarrow. I'd like to sit at coffee and we can philosophize about getting in the wheelbarrow, but I don't want to get in the wheelbarrow. I'm afraid. I got some old prejudices about God. I'm afraid I'll get in that wheelbarrow, I'll get about halfway out that wire, and I'll hear this voice go, is that Bob? Is that the little sumbitch that played with himself, Bob? I have those fears. I don't measure up. I've been, I just feel flawed. So I couldn't trust. And what has happened to me is exactly what it talks about on page 53. In my sobriety, and I was crushed by a self-imposed crisis as I could not postpone or evade. I couldn't make it go away. I can't get any relief. I am crushed by these self-imposed crises, and I had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is either everything or He's nothing. He either is or He isn't. And it gives me a choice, but with me, I got to a place where there wasn't a choice. Either God is here and He's everything, or I am dead here. I'm dead in the water. I'm in a lot of trouble. And I found myself forced by a lack of alternatives on occasion to have to walk through terrifying stuff as if God was in charge. And I tell you, everything in me says it was going to be awful. He's not. But you guys encouraged me to act as if He was. And amazing things started to happen. I'd get out the backside and I would be okay. And I realized that something had me. Something had my back. Something was on my side here. And that is the only way I've been able to trust God. I'm not a truster. I'm a cynic by nature. I'm a skeptic by nature. I can't believe. I've never been able to believe things that because people say you should believe them. As a little kid, I tried to believe in church the things that they said. But I'm a show me kind of guy. And God was very gracious, and He really came to me, and it was an amazing, amazing thing. And I'll tell you what I've noticed in my sobriety is the tug of war is between trusting in God and relying on self. It's between a life of self-reliance and a life of God dependency, a life of self-centered and a life of other-centeredness, a life driven by fear and a life motivated by love. And somewhere I am caught in the middle in this push-pull between these forces. And the actions of Alcoholics Anonymous are the actions that move me towards the light, that move me towards that side. And this tug of war and this propensity towards self-centeredness and self-reliance and fear and all the other stuff will always be in me. That's why when we get to step 10, it doesn't say continue to take personal inventory and if. No, when. When this side starts to win. And there's an old American Indian story of a young brave who's very conflicted, and he's a good-hearted brave, and he wants to be a good member of the tribe, and he goes to the elder, wise man, and he says, old man, he says, I don't understand. He said, some days I really feel a part of the tribe, and I love everyone here, and I just want to be helpful, and I feel a sense of being a part of. And he says, other times I hate everyone, and I resent everyone, and everybody makes me anxious, and I feel lost and separate, and I'm so wrapped up in me, and I go from one to the other. And he said, I don't understand. Why am I like this? And the old man said to him, he said, son, your life is like two dogs trapped in mortal combat. A dark dog representing your fears and self, and a light dog, a dog of light representing love and harmony and the Great Spirit. And they're trapped in this sack in mortal combat to the death. And the young brave says, oh, old man, which one wins? And the old man says, whatever one you feed. It's the one that wins. And I have spent my life feeding the wrong dog. See, when I'm scared or threatened, I always go for the ego and the defensiveness, and I always try to control and manage more. It is my nature to feed the wrong dog. And I think the one dog could represent my sense of my spirit, and the other dog could represent self. And I am a container that can only hold so much. If it's full of self, there's not much room for spirit. And if it's full of spirit, there's not much room for self. And it's like a teeter-totter, like a balance beam. And whenever I'm having a spiritually bad hair day and I don't feel like I'm enough, and I feel disconnected and isolated and desolate and alone, My natural inclination at that time is to gratify the ego. It's to go buy something, to indulge myself, try to get attention, all that stuff. And the problem with all of that stuff is you end up, if you feed the wrong dog, what you end up with is a guy like me who still feels awful about themselves and their life and alone, but I'm in a shinier container now, right? I've dressed it up even better. I've gotten a lot of attention. I've created the hell even more. The separation between the person that I want you to think I am and the person I really know inside that I am. The abyss has gotten deeper. And when I am good of spirit, my ego seems to be in check. You know, when I'm really right with you and right with God, I don't need a new car. I don't need a lot of validation. I don't need to judge you because you're fine. You're just like me. I see myself in you, struggling with all the same things I struggle with. When myself is not good, my spirit is not good. When I pick you apart trying to level the playing field, that's when I'm the most judgmental. And it always comes back to, it's always my relationship with God and with you. And that I always feed the wrong dog. And you guys have taught me how to feed the right dog. Nonsensical things to me, like when I feel bad and I'm afraid and worrying about stuff, and I'm, as Scott said, clearing up the wreckage of my future and doing all that stuff. Those are the times when I have this emptiness inside of me, when I'm the most, you got to keep me off a car lot when I'm like that. I don't hug any pretty girls when I'm like that. I stay out of the mall when I'm like that. I just very susceptible to try to fill my holes with those times, right? And my sponsor and people in AA will say at times like, they'll say, well, go down to detox. You know, those guys don't have any cigarettes. Take them a pack of cigarettes and see if you can find somebody that needs to talk. And it doesn't make sense, because when you're like that, you know you need people that are doing a little better to help you with your serious problems than these people down on Skid Row. I mean, really. But I go down and I do that. I fed the right dog. I come away from there and I feel good. And I don't need, then all of a sudden I can go to the car lot because I don't need a car, because my spirit's good. I don't need any of this other stuff because I'm good. It's funny how these forces are diametrically opposed to each other within me. And I only get to feed one dog here. Sex. Tell you, big deal. Over the years, if I get a phone call, 3 o'clock in the morning, some guy that wants to commit homicide, suicide, or drink, it's usually about a relationship. I'm really glad that it says in here that we're not to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. Oddly enough, we're not inventorying sex. We're inventorying harms. It's how do I treat God's kids when my sexual instincts are aroused? How do I treat God's kids when the 3 basic instincts for a need for security, when I'm afraid of being alone, when my need for sex or my need for prestige or a place in society are threatened? How do I act under those circumstances? How when those 3 instincts are threatened, I'm most prone to be selfish, most prone to be dishonest, most prone to come from a place of harming others. And I tell you what I've discovered. I sponsor a lot of guys, and I sponsor a lot of single guys, and I sponsor quite a few married guys, but a lot of single guys. And when it's a problem, 9 chances out of 10 it comes back to dishonesty. You know what happens? And I've been a liar a lot of my life, but I've never been a liar because I'm a liar. I'm a liar because I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I believe certain things that I think are so. I believe I'm not enough. So I have to embellish who I am to you because I believe that as is, you won't love me. So I create this persona, and guys I sponsor, I catch them in this all the time. And it's a persona. It's like a composite of Bob's best days. It's the best of Bob persona, enhanced a little bit and made a little bit bigger than life. And that's the only guy you meet. And then the women do the same thing. So I get a phone call. Some guy's been with a girl for about 10, 12 months. And he says, I don't know. She's changed. No, she hasn't. The real her finally showed up. You can't keep up the facade indefinitely. Eventually, all the little quirks and all the little stuff starts to come out. And, you know, it may take a year and a half, but eventually the guy's going, pull my finger. I mean, he doesn't bring the flowers home anymore, and it's pull my finger. You know, it's stuff. It's stuff. I mean, it's because you can't. The real guy eventually comes to the surface, and that's a little crude. It's an exaggeration of the differences, but it does. That's what really happens. And I think in order to smash the lie, you have to take a risk. And the risk is I have to bring myself to you in all the self-centeredness and all the propensity to childishness at times and the things I worry about and my ability to get self-consumed and distant and all my character defects, put them right on the table. And then I get to the possibility of experiencing the greatest thing a guy will ever experience. That someone might love you as is. But if they fall in love with the facade, eventually it turns south on you and the little voice in your head will be right one more time. See, when they really found out about me, they didn't love me. And just reinforces that and reinforces that and reinforces that. And I think more problems occur from writing checks we can't cash in relationships than anything else. And people feel disillusioned and hurt. And they don't know who they're with all of a sudden. And then they can't trust the person. Right? If you just be yourself. What it says on the back of your AA chip, to thine own self be true. If you have to be somebody other than what you are to be loved, you're trying to be loved by the wrong person. I'm telling you. You're trying to be loved by the wrong person. And that, one more thing about sex, and then I'll turn it over to Scott. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. And that is that's good information. I tell you, I've heard a lot of inventories, and I've done a lot of participated in sex relationship workshops over the years, where there's a lot of interaction with the people. And one of the things I've realized that regardless of the appearance of the individual on the outside, we all have sex problems. I have never met an alcoholic yet that didn't have feelings of inadequacy. No matter, they could go to the gym 10 days a week and you can't overcome that. You can spend $1 million in plastic surgery and you can't overcome that. Matter of fact, it just feeds the beast. Because you can never be enough that way. And I don't know an alcoholic, if they're honest with you, would really ever felt good about themselves naked. Really. Or ever felt like they were enough. And we all come to the table like that. We all come in here, and my great fear is that if you ever really found out about me and some of the things I've done sexually that I was ashamed of, that I felt bad about, that you would judge me. And you know a funny thing? In AA, we have the whole spectrum of sexuality. We have people whose sexual inventory might have only been one or two people in their whole life because they were so locked up on this end of the spectrum that they had to have a fifth of whiskey in them to even entertain the idea of having sex. And then we have people on the other end of the spectrum that you don't want to let them alone with your French poodle. I mean, we got everything on that spectrum in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you what I've discovered. No matter where you are, it ain't right. No matter where you are, the people on the one end feel like there's something wrong with them, that they're so uptight, and what's wrong with me? And the people on the other end that are trying to validate themselves and prove their man or womanhood over and over and over again, for validating themselves with attention, and they know that that's not right. They know something's wrong with them too. When you pull away the facade, we all come here with sex problems. The book says we'd hardly be human if we didn't. And so we inventory the harm we've done to God's kids. Where have I caused harm? And then I get a chance to ask God to mold my future sex, to mold my ideals. So and I think the most important question in the sex inventory is the question of what I could have done instead. And the reason is, if I'm going to ask God to mold my ideals and give me a vision of my future sex life, I am going to have to build that vision not only in what I want to be, but also on what I don't want to be. And I got to get a clear vision of what I should have done instead. Because I'll tell you what will happen. It'll come up again. Maybe in a different place with a different face. But the same thing will come up again. I think sobriety in the realm of the Spirit is the realm of do-overs. We get a lot of do-overs here. And I've had situations where I've handled things really badly at one time, and 4, 5, 6 years later, I'll be in a very similar situation. And the last time, I was the guy I didn't like. This time, I get to be the guy I'll feel good about, right? Because I asked myself, what could I have done instead? And I talked to my sponsor about it. Scott?
Picking up on what he was saying, I got a lady friend in Nashville that says, life is tough. First you get the test, then you get the lesson. Then if you don't get the lesson, you get the test again. And I think that might be right. And the same one said, she went to a dog race one time, and they shot the gun, and the rabbit took off, and the dogs were chasing this thing. The mechanical rabbit malfunctioned in the first turn and stopped, and the lead dog caught that rabbit. And he is tail over tea kettle into the ditch with a mechanical rabbit in his mouth. And she said, I'm exactly like that rabbit. I'm like the dog. I am shot out of a gun chasing some mechanical rabbit that ain't going to be what I want if I catch it. Oh. Recent one, our beautiful daughter Jamie is sober 15 years, and she presented us with twin grandsons almost 4 years ago. Had one of them at the doctor the other day, and she said to the doctor, and we're saving this boy a seat in AA, and the doctor said, be careful, you don't want to program that boy. And in addition to that, it's not that 3-year-olds act like alcoholics, it's that alcoholics act like 3-year-olds. I don't like that any better than you did. Okay, page 67. Somebody asked a question at the break that really helped me a lot, because I left out something I think is pretty important. We were talking about resolutely looking for our own mistakes. It's kind of interesting, those of us who were abused as children, I happen to be one of those. What was my mistake? I mean, that 5-year-old was innocent. What was my mistake? And I've found 2 mistakes so far for myself on that. One is that I carried that resentment. That was one. And the other one is that I did so much damage in that person's name. Okay? Maybe that'll help you with the forgiveness process. I hope so. That's the only reason I'm sharing it. That was important to me. Something else Bob touched on reminded me of one of the truths that I stumbled across. And again, red flag's just one of mine. I find out what cool is. Not what is cool, but what cool is. Cool is a cheap external substitute for self-esteem. Because people who have self-esteem don't do things to appear cool to other people. They have no reason to. And back when I was doing things to appear cool to other people, it's because I hated me. And I thought if I could do an act you would like of some kind, then I would be okay and could hang out with you. That's what it is. So, and I think that's the reason the price for cool has gotten so high, is because it doesn't work. That's why it continues to escalate. Page 72. Zipping right along all the way to step 5 here, a day and a half later. About 5 lines from the bottom. Wondering why should I do step 5? The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Oh, okay. Well, there's a reason. Page 73, first full paragraph. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. Remember our actor before, wanted to run the whole show? Okay. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension that makes for more drinking. Well, that's a tight circle, isn't it? Yeah. Page 74. Paragraph at the bottom of the page begins with notwithstanding. If you count up 3 lines above that, they're going to tell you there aren't any rules in AA. There are 3. Here's the first one. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. This is referencing who's to hear our fifth step. And I want to encourage, if anybody's new in recovery, don't tell. All right? Save it up. You don't need to go try to make amends to somebody yet. It's not time. It's always to put the numbers in front of the steps. Right? Don't do 9 till you've done 8. Don't do 8 till you've done 7. Get the idea? Do I need to do the rest of that? You got it? Okay. I think it's really important. All right, so there's one of the rules. Here's another one on page 101. Second paragraph from the bottom. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. And it goes on to talk about your spiritual condition, etc. That's good reading there. Page 118 also contains a rule. Paragraph begins in the middle of the page. We women count up 3 lines from that. Live and let live is the rule. My sponsor turned that around. He said, let live and live. Yeah, when I free them, then I become free. I have my own permission to make mistakes, and that's a huge freedom. Because if it's okay with me that I make, and I think that's my job. I think it's my assignment to make mistakes. I'm not going to get into this. I hope I'm not out of bounds here. If I am, someone please tell me. But in my own particular religious beliefs, the job of being perfect is already taken. And there's not like an address where I could maybe mail a resume and get in and interview and get the job of being perfect. If it's not my job to be perfect, is it not therefore my job to make mistakes? I think it's my assignment, and I'm good at it. And as we talked about earlier, it's not that I learn from the mistakes, but from living with the results of the mistakes. So it's okay that I make mistakes. It's all right. The question is, what do I do with them? Do I learn the lessons? Am I committed to it? That's what this thing is about. Top of 75. When we decide who is to hear our story, I think there are a lot of really good ways to do a fifth step, and I'm going to describe to you what my lineage has passed to me. I think Bob's is somewhat different. He's going to share that with you. I think what your sponsor says is the correct way to do this. I know in some lineages they read their 4-step. We didn't do that in mine. And it says, who is to hear our story? So what I'm supposed to do is to tell my story. The 4-step was rather specific, as you'll recall. It was a series of lists, observations, and prayers that covered resentment, fear, and sexual misconduct. There are things in my 5th step that weren't on for. And it's not because I left them out on purpose, because they weren't called for. 4-step is very specific. I'm asked sometimes what I think about writing the story of your life, and I want you to know I think it's a great idea. I hope you take a 4-step also. And then it says here, it's still in the same paragraph in 75, he should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand. Okay, here we are, threatening your life again. I hope you're not used to it yet. I hope it still lights you up. And then it looks to me like about a 1-sentence direction on how to go about that. It says we pocket our pride and go to it illuminating, which means to shine light into. Illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And what I was shown is that we begin that prayerfully in a place where we won't be interrupted. And we have Kleenex, and we have drinks, and we have the phones turned off. And I invite the man who's doing his 5th step to ask God for clarity of mind and the courage to tell it and whatever else he's comfortable with. And it's one of the times I get the chance to ask God to make me perfect. And that's what I do. I ask him to make me a perfect channel of whatever he has. And to get me out of the way. And that this would be to this man's higher good and to God's glory. And for me not to take any credit. And then it says we go to it, illuminating. If you haven't done a 5th step yet and you're afraid of it, I'm really glad to hear that. Because the ones I've seen confident going into their fifth step know what they're not going to tell. Right, you need to be puckered heading into your first one. I think that's really important. If you want to do a short fifth step, if you don't want this to last hours and hours and hours, cover the 2 or 3 worst things first. Be out of there pretty fast. If you start with the easy stuff and try to build up to it, you could be there a long time. And what I was taught in my lineage is that we don't hear fifth steps, we exchange. And when someone I sponsor tells me something they did, if I did something in that category, they hear mine. Now, I don't do my whole fifth step with them, but anything they touch on. And if they miss 2 or 3 of the worst ones I did, I make sure I cover those at the end. Because they need that information. We need to know that. And the book talks about that later. I'm not going to go to it right now. But it talks about that. I think that's really, really important. And then we have the fifth step promises here in the middle of page 75. I'm not going to read them, but you can. They're magnificent. At the end of his fifth step, I tell him the truth. And the truth is that I believe God forgives him. And I forgive him, and I'd like for him to observe that I didn't run screaming. And that I wasn't impressed. And that it's okay. It's really going to be okay. That God is big enough, and I think eager to forgive. And that the rest of his forgiveness process for himself will probably happen somewhere in step 9. That's been my experience with it anyway. And then I ask a series of questions. And the questions I ask at the end, if I haven't heard these, if I've heard them, I skip them, are: have you had sex with animals or family members? Have you stolen anything? Have you physically hurt anyone? Have you had a homosexual experience? And forgive me, this is a little bit of a political hot potato. Let me warm this one up just a little bit. If you've done what I'm about to describe and you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I'm not here to indict you. I'm here to talk about how I got free. So I hope you heard that. As a young man, I paid for an abortion. And I used to drink over that and think about the what-ifs that went with that. And by the way, if you've had one of those, I can help you get free. Please see me. Please see me. And because it is possible. Because I did. And I ask them if they've been involved in an abortion. And those are the questions I ask. And I'm not trying to make them tell me something they're unwilling to tell. I'm trying to pick the scab. I don't want him driving away saying to himself, well, I just didn't think of it. No. So I'm going to point at it. And then that finishes the first half of step 5. Then at the bottom of page 75, it says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. That's pretty specific. Carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart. I think that's a prayer that we know him better. And believe me, when you have done this the first time and you feel lighter and your sponsor didn't run screaming and you heard some of the things they did, you will know God better and you'll know yourself better too. Taking this book down from our shelf. I require the men that I sponsor go home and put their book up on a shelf. It says here very clearly. And that's one of those tongue-in-cheek things. Turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5. We ask, this is another prayer, if we have omitted anything for building an arts through which we shall walk a free man. Then they asked a series of questions having to do with, are you thorough? Have you been thorough? Have you done everything you could possibly do? And then, interestingly enough, it doesn't say we take 3 weeks off. We turn the page at page 76 where it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction. That's a series of questions about you having been thorough for the first 5, having prayed and meditated about them for an hour. It says we then look at step 6. That means right now. We have emphasized willingness being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things we've admitted are objectionable? Can he take them all? Every one. And then here's a prayer. If we cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. There is a 6-step prayer if you need it. Some do, some don't. And next, right after that, it says, when ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. I thought for a long time that prayer asked God to remove all of my character defects. And about 1.5 years ago, they changed it and put in that good and bad thing. I swear that wasn't there. And it had never occurred to me that God could use some of my character defects as tools to help me and maybe some other people. And I had one of my character defects get bad out of hand. and was unaware of it until it almost did some very, very serious damage. And it pulled me down off of my pedestal, I'll tell you right now. I was pretty impressed with the work St. Scott was doing right up until then. And God used some of my character defects to help me, to save me, I think. Powerful God. Powerful, powerful, powerful God. My sponsor explained it to me this way. He said the book doesn't say anything at all about you removing your own defects of character. You don't have the power. He said your character defects are all self-centered, without exception. And self does not have the power to push self out of the center. And if it did, it would leave a vacuum. And so the answer for you isn't to work on your character defects. You work on your character defects, you're living in the problem. The answer for you is to work on what we've taught you here, which is how to have a God-centered life. I have 3 particular character defects I refer to as my spiritual barometers. At 2 years sober, I was trying to wipe them out myself, and I was really, it was not pretty. Let me leave it that way. And I finally realized that these things were great helps to me. And my 3 spiritual barometers are lying, not actually lying, improving really the truth. It's so much prettier. And swearing. And my attitude toward those of you who possibly got your driver's license boxes, driver's license out of Cheerios boxes, right? And if one of those things is in trouble, if I'll look, they're all in trouble. Because they all seem to get out at the same time. And I don't work on those things. What I do is inventory over the last few days. What's my spiritual maintenance program look like? How much time am I spending in prayer? Am I meditating? Generally, that's the first thing that goes for me. How long has it been since you took the meeting into the jail? When's the last time you told the sponsor the truth about what's going on? Who have you tried to help? Are you letting people in traffic? How much spiritual literature have you read in the last 3 days? I take a look. There are holes in my spiritual program, or these things wouldn't be happening. So I don't work on my character defects. I go back and do the things you've taught me to do. And 3 days later, you can cut me off in traffic and almost hit me. And I will smile at you from the depths of my soul, and I will wave at you, and I will wave my entire hand. And I will say, God, go with that one. He's going to need some help today. And I'm so grateful we didn't have an accident now. I make mistakes myself. God bless you, mister. And I can't change me from the raving maniac from 3 days before. I don't have the power. So when I have a problem with a character defect, I don't focus on the darkness. What I do is I invite the light in. And when the light shows up, the darkness flees, because the darkness cannot exist in the light. When I invite the light in, my character defects just recede. I don't take power over them. I take them someplace where they can be handled. It works for me. We'll start again at 35 after the hour.
My name is Bob Darrell. I'm an alcoholic. If you do buy those tapes, if you play Scott's portion backwards, you'll hear the meaning of life. If you'll play my portion backwards, you'll hear Clancy is Satan. Oh, he's my sponsor. Yeah, it's hard to believe, isn't it? I am really enjoying this. This is our 3rd one together, and they're never the same. And I've done hundreds of these, and they're never the same. I get the same kind of some of the same stories, but you never know what's going to spin out, what news is going to come out. The Hindus have a saying that we realize is true when we start sponsoring people, or we start taking people through the steps, that the student never learns the lesson until he becomes the teacher. And I'll tell you, I'm learning more doing this than often than the people sitting listening to it. A couple things. I really like that part that Scott started with about the double life in step 5. That we are like the actor who wants to have this facade out to the world of this reputation. we want to have everybody have for us, but the secret knowledge inside ourselves of what we really are. And you know what I've discovered? That didn't stop when I got sober. Matter of fact, it got more refined in sobriety. I remember coming to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous in my first few years and feeling awful. And I had a gambling addiction my first year and a half of sobriety. I remember times coming into meetings almost suicidal because I blew my whole paycheck. And out in the parking lot, it was like I'd put this recovery suit on to come into the meetings to look good. Because God forbid you'd catch me with my spiritual pants down, right? And I was dying. Trying to be somebody I'm not. And the funny thing about an AA, in order to get help, you kind of have to look like somebody who needs it. And I think the big difficulty here is how to get help and not look like you need it. Well, thank you. I may have to need that with one of my sponsees one day. Crazy. How many people in here have ever heard of Fifth Step? Raise your hand. Wow. How many has heard more than 4? You may get this. Einstein said something one time. He said the great illusion of mankind was that there was more than one of us here. You hear enough Fifth Steps, it's the same guy. It's the same. I've heard probably close to 200 of them. I'm waiting for something new. I just did one a couple days, not too long ago. And I'm just sitting there and saying, yeah, same stuff. I'm kind of secretly, vicariously wishing he would come up with something new with, visqueen and jumper cables or something. Something exciting, But it's the same pathetic stuff. It's the selfish, insecure, afraid little kid trying to be something that he's not and stepping on other people's toes and trying to fill the vacancy with all kinds of bizarre, self-centered gratification events. And, it's the same thing. There's nothing new here. The Hindus have a story of creation that's I like a lot. It's different than the Judeo-Christian story of creation that I was raised with. I mean, we all know that one about, God made the heavens and the earth in 7 days and all that stuff, right? But their story is that God existed timelessly unto himself forever. And he got bored. And he got bored and devised a cosmic game. And the cosmic game is he broke himself into an infinite number of parts, gave all the parts amnesia, and the game is which parts are going to claim their inheritance first. Which parts are going to awaken or achieve what the Hindus call enlightenment and realize that they are not separate. That it is an illusion of the ego that tells me my case is different, that I am separate from you, that I am you, that we are the same. And that's what they call enlightenment, and they call it Maya, the great illusion. It's the hallucination of the ego, is that we're separate people. And with God, we come here feeling so separate and so different. And in time, and I think starting with the simplest identification in meetings, hearing people talk about themselves and realizing you're like them, followed right down through the 4th step, and this was our course, when you're starting to realize the people you've separated yourself from are actually sort of like you in a way, and you start to make those amends, and you start to hear 5th steps, and you start to realize and massage away the hallucination that there is no separation, that we are one. I'm not one who plugs movies from AA, but I just saw a movie that really impacted me a lot. It was called What the Bleep Are We Doing Here? Or What the Bleep Are We Here For? And if you've ever seen that, it was put together by some quantum physicists. And we're at an exciting age right now. It's the first time in the history of the planet where religion and physics are converging on each other to a commonality. when we get down in quantum mechanics, they're starting to explain miracles. On a subatomic level, they're starting to see how that stuff happens. They're starting to realize some incredible things, like the observer actually influences the observation. Almost as if we're on some kind of holodeck here. Right? We're part of the program of the holodeck here. The observer influences the observation. And there was a scene in this movie, and I sent for this guy's book, and I just started it. And it was this scientist in Japan. And he noticed, he was a physicist, and he studied for years the way that molecules of water freeze and how they always freeze uniquely and differently. And they freeze in certain patterns. And he tried some amazing experiments. He tried Buddhist loving chants over the water, and then he froze it, and it would come out a certain way that was beautiful. And then he would yell and scream and the water and freeze it, and it would come out a different way. And he started realizing he could consistently influence the way the crystalline structure of the water froze into ice by what his spirit put out towards the water. And this guy was not a religious guy. He did this and documented it, and it was astounding. And that information has gone all over the planet now, and people are doing experiments with that kind of stuff. And quantum physicists are starting to really look at how, at some subatomic level, there's a oneness. We're all connected. Down at the core of existence, we are one. That maybe some of the quantum mechanics are saying maybe the Hindus were right. Maybe there is no separation here. Maybe we all are one. There's an old American Indian tale of an earthworm who's very territorial, and he's staked out his plot of ground where it's his land, and he burrows and tunnels through this earth, this rich topsoil, and he's very territorial because it's very rich topsoil, and he doesn't want any other earthworms in there hoarding, cutting into his nutrients and stuff he's getting out of the soil. One day he's burrowing along and he runs into this other earthworm. And he gets real hostile, and he gets that posturing going on, the thing that earthworms do, I guess, when they're getting territorial. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of this. I mean, I haven't seen any of it, actually. But the story goes that they're starting to do battle, fighting over this ground, and they eventually attack each other to find out that the guy has just attacked his own tail. And when I'll tell you something, in the big book, it talks about the realm of the spirit. And in the realm of the spirit, somehow, some way that I may not be able to understand or show you how the dots connect, every time I've hurt you, I've hurt me, without exception. Every time I've attacked you, I'm the earthworm attacking my own tail, because there is no separation. That's why there's nobody on this planet that gets away with nothing. We may hide it under the rug. We may look like, I got away with something. There is no free lunch. Everything comes home to roost eventually. And we're in the middle of the process of circumventing our own karma. We are in the process of cleaning house and making right the separation and damage we've done to our other selves and the people around us. And this really will be actualized absolutely in step 12 as we start to help these new people and realize after a while what we're doing. When I'm helping you, I'm helping the newcomer that I was years ago. When I'm helping the guy that's sober 20 years and he's leaving AA, I'm helping the Bob that on occasion was leaving and didn't even know I was leaving. Right? I'm helping me. And it's an amazing, what a sense of community that you can get for a guy who, like me, who's never fit anywhere, who really suffered painfully from loneliness, to be a part of once again. The only time I ever knew a part of was when my early days of drinking. Step 6, top of page 76. I think the story of step 6, the story of how I become entirely ready, is really the story of my sobriety. My sponsor has a great great line. He says you get to Alcoholics Anonymous and you're beaten half to death by the bottle and you throw the towel in. And then somewhere along the line you get just enough self-esteem to pull it back. And you'll spend the rest of your life tearing off little bits of it. The job and the IRS and the relationship and the house and the neighbors. And you'll spend the rest of your life throwing in back little pieces of that towel. Spend the rest of your life becoming entirely ready. And I tell you what I know about me is it's changed. The last 7 or 8 years it's become different for me. But for my first 18 years, probably, or 19 years of my sobriety, I was only ever brought to the table in step 6 through pain. And I'm a guy that I can intellectually know I should give something up. But there's a world of difference between knowing you should give it up and being entirely ready. I mean, there's a world of difference. I bet you there's people in this room that know intellectually beyond a shadow of a doubt they should stop certain things. Smoking, probably. You know you should stop smoking. There's a difference between knowing you should stop smoking and being entirely ready to stop smoking. I mean, there's a world of difference in that. Same with drinking. I knew for years before I got sober that I need to get sober. This stuff's killing me. But I wasn't entirely ready. And why wasn't I entirely ready? Because there was still an illusion of value in what I was doing. When it came to drinking, it was the illusion that somehow, someday I'll control and enjoy my drinking. I still think that there's still fun left in the bottle for me, and that I can reap that fun with a limited amount of damage. So there was an illusion of value. It wasn't until I wore that out completely, and I get it that it's always going to be the same. It's never going to be like it was when I was 20 years old. When I got that, then I was able to come to you and come to God with the obsession to drink. But I couldn't come until 1 minute before that, really. Because I couldn't. I can ask God all day long to take something away from me that I refuse to let go of. And God will never rescind his first gift to me, which is my free will. He will not rescind it. He's not an Indian giver. So if I can hold a death grip on something and say, God, take it away. Take it away. He ain't going to take it away. Because he won't circumvent his first gift to me. But when I get to a place where I've realized there's no value in it, and I've worn it out, and there's nothing left, then it's pretty easy to give it up. It's pretty easy to get pretty serious with the 7th step. It's pretty easy to be entirely ready at that point. I know that most of the people in this room would like to be free of the sleeplessness, the anxiety and the churning inside of yourself, and just what it does to your spirit when you have a deep resentment. I don't know anybody that doesn't want to be free from that. But are you willing to give up the pleasure of judgment? Right? And you can't be free of one without the other. In Bill's story, he talks about defects of character or shortcomings differently than anywhere else in AA literature. He refers to them as root and branch. And I go to God for a long time. I'm asking him to take away. Asking him to take away the defect. I'm not. I'm asking him to take away the consequences of the defect. I want him to take away the branch, but I want to still hold on to the goody, the thing that gives me the illusion of value. Because I'm afraid. What if I ask God to take away my anger and my defensiveness, then who would stand up for me when I feel threatened or afraid? I guess I would have to trust in him. If I ask God to take away my lust and all the problems that incur from the harms that happen, all that whole picture of sex, then what would I do to make myself feel more valid and whole? What would I do? If I ask God to take away my greed, would I still show up for work? Would I still have the edge and the drive? See, all my defects of character are really defense mechanisms that I think I need to allow me to exist in a world that I'm very afraid of. A world that often leaves me feeling like I have a big vacancy inside myself. And I use these defects of character to validate myself, to shore myself up, to give me a false sense of security, an illusion of value, a feeling like I'm protected and I'm going to protect me, or I'm going to take care of it. And the reality is with all those things is that they don't work. They don't work. I mean, if they did work, we wouldn't be having this whole weekend really is a workshop on the process of surrender. Really, that's what this whole weekend's about. It's how from the third step prayer on, it's really about carrying out the decision I made in step 3, so I can enter into a life of self-abandonment and service. It's a surrender process. And if the only reason that we come to that is because of our failure. If this wasn't true, then Alcoholics Anonymous, we'd be having like some kind of Anthony Robbins kind of, your personal power. Yeah, take charge of your life. We don't say that in AA. We say, step away from your life. Right? You've been in charge of your life. Well, so how's that working for you? That's what we thought. Okay, step away from your life. Go make these amends. Write that inventory. Help these people. Prayer and meditation. Leave yourself alone. Go help God's kids. This is not a self-help program. It's a program of self-abandonment and service, which becomes very evident in the third step prayer and in the seventh step prayer. That I am... I said that for many years I came to the table in step 6 out of pain. And something started happening very slowly within me. And I started to come to the table for something else. And it really was as a result of the people that I sponsored. And also that I started to fall in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. And when you think about it, how can you not fall in love with AA and be active here, really? What it does for our own lives. And I know I'm a chronic malcontent, and I can take my life for granted easily. One of the guys I sponsor, who came from the gutter up into this incredible job and family and kids and house and everything, has a great saying. Sheldon says, I have a tremendously great life. It's just a shame it's wasted on a schmuck who can't appreciate it. It's really... But I may not be able to be grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous in my life at all times. But I'll tell you start sponsoring people, and you watch them get their kids back, and you watch them buy their first home, and you watch the lights come on as they try to help others. How could you not be in love with something that would do that in the lives of people you've come to love? I mean, how could you not? And I started to realize not only did my love affair with Alcoholics Anonymous start to have some depth and weight, but I started to realize that I ended up in a position in AA. A position I did not sign up for, but it doesn't make any difference. I'm in it. It's the hand I've been dealt. And the position is I sponsor people. And whether I want them to or not, they will look to me as their first example of Alcoholics Anonymous in their lives. And the new people in my group will look to the old. If you're sober over 5 years, the newer people will look to you on how to conduct their lives sober. Now, you may not tell them to do that, but when you start to awaken to that reality, with that, you will realize that much has been given you and much is expected. And I'll tell you, I started coming to the table in step 6 with some of this stuff, not for me. I just didn't want to be a bad example. I didn't want to do that for you. I didn't want to. If it would have been all about me, I'm telling you, I had some character defects. I think I could have, I don't know that I was really done with them yet. I could have maybe held on to them a little bit longer if it would have been all about me. But I started, instead of coming to the table without a pain, I started coming out of inspiration and love. The Jewish faith, one of the big icons of their spirituality was the Temple of Solomon. And the Temple of Solomon had 2 pillars that held it up in the entrance to the temple. And those pillars represented the 2 basic foundations of the Hebrew faith. And the one was the law, and the other one was love. And I think we have the same thing in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have the law of cause and effect. All the things, all the death threats that Scott covered in the book, all the cause and effect of alcoholism. If you don't do this, your spirit's going to get sick, and if it stays sick long enough, you're going to drink. The obsession to drink will return, and you're going to die. That is the law. It's not a vindictive thing. It's just the law of cause and effect of alcoholism. Something that we would like to ignore or evade, but it's the truth. And then on the other hand, we have the other pillar, which is our love for each other that we develop here. And you can't get, I think the only way you can ever get that is to step up to the plate and sponsor people and go on 12-step calls and be involved in a home group. You can't get that sitting on the sidelines. It won't bring you to the table. You have to get out into the trenches and be with the people and start to try to listen to the 5 steps and help guys make their amends and all that stuff. And it brings a guy like me back to this entirely ready. Yes, God, I don't want to be that bad example anymore. I started to get that all my actions were my vote for how I think you should conduct your life sober. And I only get one vote. And if I think it's cool to cross-talk in a meeting or come late or hit on the new girls or any of that stuff, then what I'm really saying is I think everybody should do that, right? When you awaken to that, all of a sudden, I don't want everybody to do that, and I don't want to do it either, right? I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. And so that brings a guy like me to the table, and I become entirely ready. And then when ready, and if I'm not ready, there's simple prayer. It just says we ask God for the willingness. There's nothing I have to do in Alcoholics Anonymous that I can't do. I get to this place and I just can't imagine living without one of these defense mechanisms, these defects. It's okay. I just ask God. God, help me to be willing. And then when ready, say something like this. And the thing that impresses me the most of the 7-step prayer is what I'm precisely asking God for. And it really is a reaffirmation to me of what the essence of Alcoholics Anonymous is about and what we talked about in step 3. I'm asking him not to take away the defects that stand in the way of my being happy or wonderful or rich or famous or being loved or any of that stuff. I'm asking him to take away the things that stand in the way of my usefulness, that I've shown up here to be a servant. The Alcoholics Anonymous has a set of traditions that are, I tell you, as good for me as they are for the group. And one of the traditions talks about our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. They're trusted. Alcoholics Anonymous is the only organization on the planet where you come in a big shot and work your way up to servant. Right? If you're diligent about these steps, in 10 years, you're going to be sweeping floors. I mean, right? You come in telling everybody how to do everything, and in 10 years, if you've really grown spiritually, you'll be sweeping floors and giving new guys rides. You'll be the big shots will be in the back of your car. You'll be the limo driver. Right? Yeah. And I tell you what I think step 7 is really trying to do is to bring me towards my primary purpose. See, I'll tell you a little story something that happened to me when I was about 19 years sober, I think. When I was 19 years sober, materially, I was doing better than I've ever done. Probably, I was doing better than I'm doing now. And I had everything I would ever want. I had a lifestyle beyond anything I could have dreamed of. I remember this incident, this time really clearly what I went through. I had just come back from Maui, spending a lot of time on the beach over there. And I stayed at this 4-star hotel, and I had a great time. And I'd rented a Harley for the whole time I was over there and went to some of the greatest restaurants. And it was just a great stint of self-indulgence. And I came home and I have a nice house, big house, about, I don't know, I think it's 5,700 square feet. It sits up on a hill, looks out over the city of Las Vegas with a pool and waterfalls, and in the garage I had the first R Jaguar ever sold in Las Vegas. It just came out. I had a C5 Corvette. I had a 740IL BMW, 2 Harley Davidsons, and one was in a magazine. It was a stellar bike. I had more money in the bank than I would spend this lifetime. And I'm dying. And I'm sinking. It was the last depression I ever experienced, and the first one I'd experienced in all the years I was sober, from probably the time I was 4.5, 5 years till that time. And I'm about 19 years sober, and I am really in a lot of trouble. And I don't know what's wrong with me, because I have everything. There's nothing to buy. I have everything in my life I could ever want, and it doesn't make it better. In some way, it's making it worse. And I don't get it. And I don't know what's wrong. And I'm still going to meetings. It's not like I didn't drop out of AA. I was still going to probably 8 meetings a week. I'm still making a couple commitments down at the detox. I'm still sponsoring people. And I go to a meeting, and I go to a meeting, and this friend of mine said, I'm telling him about it, and he nailed me. He said, Bob, you go to a lot of meetings and you run your mouth a lot in AA. He said, but I don't think your primary purpose is helping other alcoholics anymore. He says, I think that's been moved into 3rd or 4th place. I think your primary purpose is you. And when he said that, man, it cut me to the quick. I knew he was right. I don't know how that happened. A guy who went for over a decade, where what I was about was helping God's kids and doing 12-step work and sponsoring people. That was my life. And somehow I still did it, but my focus shifted. And incrementally, little bit by little bit, I moved that into 2nd, 3rd, 4th position in my life, even though I still did it. And my primary purpose really was me, my gratification, my toys, my finances, my life. I was the center again. And I was dying. I was dying. And this guy told me that, and I made some surrender things, and I did some stuff in my business, and within a week, I'm filling my car up with new guys, and I'm taking guys through the steps again, and I stopped. You know what had happened in that period? I was still sponsoring guys. Here's the guy I become. I become the guy when a guy I sponsor needs to talk. It's like, I need to talk to you. I really need to talk to you. Okay. And I'd stand there and be thinking, just like, when is he going to shut up so I can get back to me here? Right? I become that guy. And I didn't even know I did that, because I'm physically going through the actions. And I haven't been in that spot since. I get it today what my primary purpose is. That I'm asking God in step 7 to take away the things that stand in the way of fulfilling that purpose. I didn't get saved from an alcoholic death to be wonderful. I got saved from an alcoholic death, and I was entered into a contract and if you buy that and you really get that is your purpose, then in that light, everything in my life makes perfect sense. All my pain, all my failure, all my defects of character, everything I've ever done in my life, in that light makes perfect sense into helping the next guy that comes along that has that same stuff going on. It all becomes useful in that light. When it's all about me, it's just in the way. When it's about being a servant, it's all useful. And I'll tell you, I love my life today. You know why I love it? Not because of the stuff in it. I love my life because it makes sense. Everything in my life makes absolute sense to me today. I have never felt more in touch with God's universe, and more a part of, and more useful in my whole life. I really get it, why I'm here. I think it is the thing that lights my light. That's why I'm here. I love alcoholics. I love this life I've been given. I love that a parasite, lonely guy that never fit anywhere is useful, is a part of. Oh, man, it's so sweet. And I tasted the bitterness of this thing for years, and it's not bitter anymore. I'll tell you a quick little story, and then I'll pass it over to Scott, and he'll end us up. One of the worst, one of the guys I sponsor, Sheldon, has a great saying. He says that if the story that what Scott's, if we agree with the story Scott talked about the frogs on the log, and what two of them decide to jump